You wake up at 3 in the morning, heart pounding so hard you can feel it in your throat. Your sheets are soaked, your hands are trembling. And for those first few seconds, you're still running, still feeling the presence behind you, still trapped in that primal terror of being chased by something you cannot see but absolutely know is there. You tell yourself it's just a dream. You try to shake it off, but 3 nights later, it happens again. Different setting, different scenario, but the same existential dread, the same desperate flight, the same feeling that if whatever's behind you catches up, something fundamental about who you are will be destroyed. Millions of people experience this exact nightmare. And when they mention it to friends, to family, to anyone, they get the same dismissive response. It's just a dream. It doesn't mean anything. Your mind processing stress. Maybe you watch something disturbing before bed. But Carl Jung spent decades in clinical practice, sitting across from patients who described these recurring chase dreams, and he saw something that made his blood run cold. This wasn't random neural noise. This wasn't your brain dumping irrelevant information while you sleep. This was your psyche screaming at you in the only language it had left. And the most disturbing part, the thing chasing you isn't some external demon or random anxiety. It never was. Jung's mentor, Sigmund Freud, was the first to crack open the door to understanding what dreams actually are. Freud discovered something revolutionary that shattered the assumption that dreams were meaningless. He demonstrated that dreams are wish fulfillments in disguise, carefully constructed by the unconscious to smuggle forbidden content past the ego's defenses. When you're being chased in a dream, Freud would tell you that you're running from something far more personal than you want to admit. You're fleeing from a repressed desire or fear that your conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. The pursuer isn't a monster. It's an unconscious impulse, a hidden part of yourself that you've exiled because accepting it would shatter the identity you've constructed. Freud traced many of these pursuits back to what he called the Oedipus complex, those forbidden desires and unacceptable impulses that form in childhood and get buried so deep we convince ourselves they don't exist. The chase represents resistance. Your ego, that part of you that maintains your sense of self, is literally running away from knowledge it cannot integrate. Every time you flee in the dream, you're reinforcing the repression. You're choosing the exhausting work of running over the terrifying work of turning around and seeing what you've been hiding from yourself. Freud was right about the mechanism. He understood that the pursuer represents something you've rejected. But he stopped there. He saw the problem, but missed what it was actually trying to accomplish. Jung took Freud's discovery and followed it deeper into territory that made even Freud uncomfortable. In Jung's clinical files, patient after patient described these chase dreams, and Jung noticed a pattern that Freud's theory couldn't fully explain. The pursuers weren't just representing repressed sexual desires or childhood conflicts. They were far more complex, far more purposeful. Jung gave this phenomenon a name that would change psychology forever. The shadow, not a demon, not a disorder, but a repository of everything you've rejected about yourself to become the person you think you're supposed to be. Here's what makes the shadow so psychologically dangerous. It doesn't just contain your negative traits, your anger, your selfishness, your cruelty. It contains your unrealized potential, your suppressed power. Every capability you denied because someone told you it wasn't acceptable. Every strength you buried because it didn't fit the image you were trying to maintain. The shadow is you, the complete you. The version of yourself that exists before society trained you to perform a socially acceptable role. And when you ignore it, when you keep running from it, something terrifying happens. These rejected aspects don't disappear, they become autonomous. They gather energy in the unconscious. They develop a kind of independent will, and they start chasing you through your dreams, trying desperately to get your attention. The chase isn't punishment. Jung understood this with absolute clarity. The chase is an invitation. Your psyche is trying to make you whole again. It's attempting to reintegrate the parts of yourself that you've scattered and denied. But here's why you keep running. Your conscious ego's greatest fear isn't death or pain or failure. It's losing control of the identity you've spent your entire life constructing. Society trained you meticulously to exile certain parts of yourself. Every time you were told to sit still, to be polite, to not make waves, to not be too much or too intense or too different, you made a choice. You exiled a part of yourself to fit in. You created your own pursuer. And now you're trapped in the most exhausting cycle in human psychology. The more you run, the more powerful the shadow becomes. The more you deny these aspects of yourself, the more energy they accumulate in the unconscious. Jung warned his patients about this with genuine urgency. What you refuse to integrate will eventually destroy you from within. Not metaphorically, actually. The psychological fragmentation becomes so severe that the personality can no longer hold itself together. But Jung saw something else in these chase dreams, something that bordered on the mystical. He believed the pursuer might have divine origin. That your unconscious isn't just trying to heal you, it's trying to evolve you. The chase is sacred. This isn't torture. This is your psyche's desperate attempt at what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating all the scattered parts of yourself into a complete human being. And that process requires something that feels like death, the death of the false self, the death of the carefully constructed persona you've been hiding behind. You're not being hunted, you're being called home. Now comes the moment that separates those who will remain fragmented from those who will become whole. And I need to warn you, what Jung discovered about this moment will disturb you more than the chase itself. Because the solution isn't what you think it is. It's not about understanding the symbolism. It's not about analyzing the dream from a safe distance. It's about something far more terrifying. It's about stopping. Jung's clinical files document case after case of patients who experienced the same psychological breakthrough. And every single one of them described the same pivotal moment. The moment they stopped running in the dream. Not woke up, not escaped. Stopped, turned around, and faced what was chasing them. But here's what makes this so difficult. This isn't just a decision you make in a dream. This is a fundamental shift in how your conscious ego relates to your unconscious mind. Your entire psychological structure has been organized around avoidance. Every defense mechanism you've built, every rationalization, every distraction, every substance, every relationship you've used to avoid being alone with yourself, all of it exists to keep you running. When Jung talks about turning around, he's talking about dismantling the very architecture of your personality, the false self that society helped you construct. And this is why it requires more courage than running. Because running feels like survival. Turning around feels like suicide. Your ego genuinely believes that confronting these rejected aspects of yourself will destroy you. And in a way, it's right. Something does die in that moment, but it's not you. It's the lie about who you are. Here's the paradox that Jung kept returning to in his work. The thing you fear most in that dream, the thing you're convinced will destroy you if it catches you, that thing is actually what you need most. Not metaphorically, literally. That pursuer contains the exact qualities, the exact energy, the exact power that your psyche is trying to integrate. You're not running from a demon. You're running from yourself, from the parts of you that got exiled because they didn't fit the acceptable narrative. And your unconscious mind, in its infinite wisdom, has been trying to return these parts to you. But you keep refusing the delivery. Jung called this differentiated perception. The ability to see the shadow clearly, not as an enemy, but as a messenger. And this is where his work diverges so dramatically from Freud's. Freud saw the unconscious as a repository of dangerous impulses that needed to be managed, controlled, kept in check. Jung saw something entirely different. He saw that the unconscious wasn't trying to sabotage you, it was trying to complete you. Every dream, every symbol, every terrifying image was an attempt at communication. Your psyche speaking in the only language it knows. The language of symbol and myth and archetype. So let me give you the integration protocol, not as theory, as practice, as the actual psychological work that changes the structure of your consciousness. First, you must identify what you're actually running from. And I don't mean the surface symbol. I don't mean the monster or the shadowy figure or the faceless pursuer. I mean the psychological reality it represents. Jung discovered that the environment of the chase tells you everything. Are you being chased through your childhood home? That's unintegrated family trauma, aspects of yourself that got rejected in your formative years. Are you running through a workplace? That's your relationship with power, authority, competence. Through a forest, your instinctual nature, your wild self that civilization tried to tame. The pursuer itself reveals the specific quality you've exiled. Is it aggressive? You've rejected your own capacity for healthy aggression, for setting boundaries, for protecting yourself. Is it seductive? You've rejected your own power, your magnetism, your ability to influence. Is it monstrous? You've rejected the parts of yourself that don't fit the sanitized version of who you think you should be. Every single characteristic of that pursuer is a characteristic you possess but refuse to acknowledge. Second, you must recognize these aspects as parts of your complete self. Not foreign invaders, not demons, not punishment for being bad. Parts of you. Jung was absolutely clear about this. The shadow contains not just what we call darkness, but suppressed brilliance, unrealized potential. The person who's been running from their anger is also running from their passion. The person fleeing their sexuality is also fleeing their creative power. The person avoiding their darkness is also avoiding their light. Because you cannot selectively numb. When you exile one part, you exile the whole spectrum. And here's where it gets practical. Jung developed a technique he called active imagination. And this is not meditation. This is not visualization. This is conscious dialogue with the unconscious. You stop running in the dream itself, you turn around, and you ask the pursuer a question. What do you want? What are you trying to give me? Why are you here? And then, and this is crucial, you listen. You allow the unconscious to respond, not through your rational mind trying to figure it out, through spontaneous images, feelings, words that arise without your conscious direction. Drop a comment right now if you've ever had a dream where you finally stopped running. Tell me what happened. Because what I'm about to reveal next is what Jung discovered happens after that moment of turning around. When you actually do this work, when you stop fleeing and start integrating, something shifts in your entire psychological structure. Jung documented this in patient after patient. The person who's been running from their power finally stops absorbing everyone else's projections and starts weaponizing their awareness. Think about this. You've been having these chase dreams for how long? Years? Decades? Every single time you've been learning the terrain, learning the patterns, learning how the shadow operates. You've been gathering data without even knowing it. The empath who finally integrates their shadow doesn't become cold. They become strategically dangerous to anyone who tries to manipulate them. Because they now recognize the game. They see the hooks. They understand the unconscious contracts that keep people enslaved to toxic dynamics. And they refuse to participate. This is what Jung meant by psychological independence. Not isolation, not antisocial behavior. The freedom that comes from being whole enough that you don't need external validation to know who you are. The shadow integrated becomes your greatest advantage. That aggression you were running from, it becomes discernment. That darkness you feared, it becomes depth. That power you rejected, it becomes presence. You stop being a victim of your own unconscious, and you start collaborating with it. The chaser becomes the ally, your own psyche working for you instead of against you. And this is when the dreams change, or stop altogether. Because here's what Jung understood that most people miss. The chase dreams aren't punishment. They're not random neural firing. They're not meaningless. They're your unconscious mind's increasingly desperate attempts to get your attention, to force integration, to make you whole. And when you finally listen, when you finally turn around and do the work, the dreams stop. Not because the shadow disappears, but because it's been integrated. It's no longer other. It's you. Complete, whole, undivided. This is individuation, Jung's ultimate goal for human psychological development. Not comfort, not happiness, wholeness. And I need to warn you about what this actually means. Because people hear wholeness and they think it means life gets easier. It doesn't. It means you get real. It means you stop lying to yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. It means you carry the full weight of your own consciousness without projecting it onto others, without blaming, without excusing, without running. The awakened individual's new challenge isn't the shadow anymore. It's living as a complete self in an unconscious world. It's maintaining your integration while everyone around you is still fragmented, still projecting, still running from themselves, and Jung had a warning about this too. You must never reveal your certainty about what you now see, because the unconscious masses will experience your wholeness as a threat to their fragmentation. They will attack what they cannot understand.